Mary Bryan was a huge star at Paramount in the late 1920s, known as the sweetest girl in pictures. After a successful transition to the Talkie, she left Paramount in 1931 and drifted between major studio work and starring in B-movies at Poverty Row Studios for the next decade. What happened? Join me as I investigate. Mary Bryan was born in Texas in 1906 as Louise Dantzler. After her father's death, her family moved a few times, eventually making their way to Long Beach, California by the early 1920s. At the age of 17, Louise competed in a bathing beauty contest at Long Beach, where one of the judges was movie actress Esther Ralston. According to Esther, although Louise didn't win, she deserved something for her efforts. Esther arranged for her to get an interview and a screen test at Paramount for the upcoming first film adaptation of Peter Pan. To her surprise, Louise was cast in the leading role of Wendy Darling in the film with Esther as her mother. Another new actress, Betty Bronson, was handpicked by author J.M. Barrie to play Peter. The three actresses became lifelong friends from working on Peter Pan. Paramount also changed Louise's name to Mary Bryan, which stuck for the rest of her life. Peter Pan was a smash hit upon its release and got particularly good notices for its special effects, especially for the flying scenes in which there are no visible wires or ropes. The film also made an impression on a young Walt Disney, who used it as an inspiration for his 1953 film of the same name. Check out the 1924 silent version on my YouTube channel. From the success of Peter Pan, Esther, Betty, and Mary were launched into stardom. Paramount immediately put Mary to work as the title character in The Little French Girl in 1925, which is sadly lost, but teamed her again with Esther Ralston. In this film, and in most of her follow-up films, Mary played the naive young ingenue. Years later, when talking about Jean Crane, Arlene Francis would sum up this type of role as the lovely heroine who has not got a past but looks as if she would have a bright future. This type of typecasting for Mary got her the nickname the sweetest girl in pictures. Mary continued to play this young ingenue in several hit films in 1926, including as the sweet girl that comes between rival football players William Haynes and Francis X. Bushman Jr. in Brown of Harvard, and as the lovely young lady that captures the hearts of brothers Ronald Colman, Ralph Forbes, and Neil Hamilton in Beau Guest. However, Paramount did allow Mary on occasion to branch out from her successful niche. Also in 1926, she played a saucy comedienne in Behind the Front, who uses her feminine wiles to trick two rivals played by Wallace Beery and Raymond Hatton into joining the war effort in World War I. She also got to demonstrate her comedic talent again in 1927's Running Wild, in which she starred as the daughter of W.C. Fields. Over the next 3 years, Mary starred in numerous hits at Paramount. Highlights included Knockout Riley in 1927, Harold Teen in 1928, and Someone to Love, also in 1928. Mary made her talkie debut in the 1928 part talkie Varsity opposite Charles Buddy Rogers before being loaned out to the British company Worldwide Pictures to star in their first full talkie, also her first full talkie, Black Waters, which was filmed in Hollywood. But Mary's first full surviving talkie was Paramount's 1929 film The Man I Love, in which she played her usual good girl role, who was this time in love with a boxer played by Richard Arlen, who was lured away by Olga Baklanova. The Man I Love got Mary good reviews and appeared to have been a commercial hit. Paramount deemed Mary a talkie success and immediately put her to work in several more talkies over the next few years. She starred as a schoolteacher in the Wild West opposite Gary Cooper in The Virginian, as a dramatic young lady dealing with her parents' divorce in The Marriage Playground, in which she was top billed over the new-to-Hollywood stage star Frederick March, The Light of Western Stars, which was a western that teamed her with Richard Arlen again, and The Royal Family of Broadway, which gave her a wonderful opportunity to showcase her talent in the movie version of a popular Broadway play and hold her own with such stage stars as Ina Claire and, again, Frederick March. 1931 marked an important turning point in Mary's career. She was still an in-demand, successful talkie star, but her Paramount contract was coming to an end. Instead of renewing it, she decided to branch out and try freelancing. Now, I couldn't find any information specifically about why her contract came to an end. One source said that she didn't renew it, but I'm not sure if that is the case or if she was let go. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, she did decide to freelance. Freelancing in the classic studio era was always a gamble, as studios often resented stars for not staying under the constraints of their contracts, but Mary appeared to have made a success at it for a while. In 1931, she starred in one of her biggest talkie hits, and perhaps her most well-remembered talkie role, that of Peggy Grant opposite Pat O'Brien in Adolphe Menjou and the successful movie version of the Broadway smash The Front Page. Mary's career over the next 5 years saw her move back and forth between major studios and Poverty Row studios, and alternating between leading roles and supporting ones, although she was usually the lead in most of her movies. Regardless of the what or where, Mary delivered her most fascinating and nuanced work during her freelance period, in my opinion, resulting in several award-worthy performances that really pushed the envelope of her former sweetest girl stereotype. In 1932, she starred in Manhattan Tower as a tough young woman who was cheated out of her money and demands it back. In 1933, she got to star as a hilarious gold digger in Girl Missing with Linda Farrell and Ben Lyon. Also that year, she starred in 1 year later, delivering a powerful, dramatic performance as the wife of a convicted killer. In 1934, she starred with John Darrow in Monte Carlo Nights as another wife of a convicted killer and gave another powerhouse performance. You can check out the full movie of Monte Carlo Nights on my YouTube channel. In 1936, she was teamed with Cary Grant to play a no-nonsense secretary in the comedy The Amazing Adventure. 1937 saw her in 2 different comedic roles. First, as a no-nonsense librarian wooed by a sailor on a bet in the very funny Navy Blues, and then as the long-suffering daughter of a curmudgeon played by Walter Brennan in Affairs of Cappy Ricks. According to one source, Mary also auditioned for the Janet Gaynor's role in A Star is Born in 1937, but sadly was not cast. As fantastic as Janet was, it would have been very interesting to see what Mary would have done with the part. Later in 1937, Mary decided to take some time off. After a brief marriage in 1941, Mary returned to work again in a few more B-movies, including Danger, Women at Work in 1943, a cute B-comedy that teamed her with Patsy Kelly and Isabel Jewell. During her years off, Mary spent a lot of time working for the war effort during World War II. She entertained troops in Italy, North Africa, and Japan. Mary returned to films one last time in 1947 to star in the British mystery Dragnet, in which she played a flight attendant that assists with a police investigation. Also in 1947, Mary married film editor George Tomasini, who became particularly successful editing many of the Hitchcock classic films, including Rear Window and Psycho. Before retiring for good, Mary briefly worked in television between 1951 and 1954. Her most famous work was as a classic TV mom in the popular series Meet Corliss Archer, in which she starred as the mother to the teenage star Ann Baker. When that series ended in 1954, Mary retired for good to enjoy her life with her husband. George Tomasini passed away in 1964. According to an interview that Mary gave to Motion Picture Editors Guild in 1996, she spent the majority of her time after her husband's death painting, raising animals, and tending to her garden. She also remained lifelong friends with both Betty Bronson and Esther Ralston. In 1984, Mary and Esther made an appearance at a screening of Peter Pan at the Sheraton Palace Hotel. She also actively gave interviews to film historians for several years, including Michael G. Anchorage for his book The Sound of Silence. Mary lived to be 96 years old and passed away from natural causes in 2002. So, we are left with the question, why did Mary Bryan's talkie stardom falter in the early 1930s? Well, it didn't, actually. In contrast to most of the silent stars that I cover, Mary's story was a bit different. The more accurate question to ask about her career would be, why did she go from starring in such classics as The Royal Family and The Front Page to working in mostly B-movies? The answer lies in her walking away from Paramount in 1931 and deciding to freelance, a very brave move for many reasons. First, Paramount was notorious for mistreating its stars. Bebe Daniels, Louise Brooks, and Clara Bow all recounted various horror stories. I'm sure Mary's experience was no different, and when her contract came up for renewal, she walked away. Her move to freelance was also brave because she did not have guaranteed roles at studios, but instead auditioned and had to find opportunities mostly on her own, which she did quite successfully. I know I say this a lot for almost everyone that I cover, but Mary appeared to be happy just working and acting, even more so when she was doing it on her own terms. I think she gave some of her best performances while she was freelancing because she was able to find projects that catered directly to her talents and demonstrate that she was more than just a pretty young ingenue. What a trailblazer, what a talent, what a legend. Be sure to watch Peter Pan and Monte Carlo Nights on my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I cover the silent to talkie career of Estelle Brody. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week.